I love this question, which is, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And I love thinking about that when I'm thinking about big life decisions. Like, what would I do if I weren't afraid? And it's usually like the big one, the bigger thing that I really want to do, but I'm afraid to do it. It's like, that's what I should do. And when he said that, when he actually played out what my like revenge fantasy was in real life, I realized it looked stupid.
Petty.
Yeah. I looked like the beta in the fucking situation, right?
Yeah.
And so he was like, the only thing that you can do is win so big that all of them constantly compare themselves to you, and then you'll forget they exist. And that's when he said, success is the only revenge. He's like, it's not the best revenge. He's like, it's the only one. There's no other revenge, because everything else is petty. Everything else does show that you were thinking about these people all day long, which means they win by default. He's like, all you can do is think about your goal and winning. He's like, and when you win, that's when you become so big that they shrink into irrelevance. You cast a shadow that no one even can see them behind you. Warren Buffett said that the difference between really successful people and the most successful people, this is me paraphrasing, is that the most successful people say no to almost everything. And I've tried to take that because it's so hard. And I think that a lot of it's so simple and so hard, which a lot of success habits are, which is like, if you do the same thing for a very long period of time, I think this is Shane, I can't remember the name, but I'll say that. Yeah, it's Churchill again. He said, success comes down to doing the obvious thing for an extraordinary period of time without convincing yourself you're smarter than you are. And I just love that quote. There's this line that I heard David Goggins say on Rogan, and I can't remember who he was saying it to or what he said in response to, but he just said, "I'm David Goggins, bitch." I remember him saying it, and I thought to myself, like, you want to be able to say that in the mirror to yourself and not laugh at yourself. Mm-hmm. And the only way that I can do that is know that when no one's watching, I work harder than when they're watching. And thinking about it like that has given me this persistent and ever-present scorecard or third party that's like, no one's watching, which means now you have to work, because otherwise you're full of shit. Mm. And so it's this continuous reinforcing cycle of the me and other me holding the whip behind me to see how much I can take. But with each lash of the whip that I take, learning that I can take it and continue to trudge on. And so as long as you keep going, you bear witness to yourself of what you are capable of. And I find that incredibly satisfying in the trenches of misery when you have to go through it. It's just laps, just sheer volume of work. And I call it the Rocky cutscene, and almost every successful person that I have ever encountered has gone through not a month or a year, but many years of doing work without reward, where they have to do things that other people find boring, and they have to sacrifice things that everyone finds interesting, that most people want to do during that entire season of their life. And they basically sacrifice a season of other things that they would prefer to do stuff that they would not prefer to do because of the one thing they want most. And that's the Rocky cutscene. And instead of lasting 5 minutes, it just usually lasts 5 or 10 years. If you're insecure, which everybody is, let's be real, you might as well use the insecurity to get something out of it, right? Like one of my favorite things about entrepreneurship is like, use what you've got. And so a lot of people think that they need to fix their conditions in order to get like the perfect conditions before they start. But the perfect condition is whatever one you're in, because it gives you whatever assets you have. That's the cards that you're dealt. And so you just play the hand. And a lot of people have great cards. It's like, man, I'm so afraid of, it's like, use it. It's like, I have nothing. What makes you very dangerous, because you have nothing to lose, right? Like one of the really interesting things I think about it from a business perspective, but it probably applies to everything, is that there's always an advantage and a disadvantage from every position. Hard work is the goal. And so it's not like work hard so that X, because as soon as you have a so that, then the X is the thing. But if the goal is to work as hard as you possibly can, then the only real output we have is who we become along the way. And so in reframing that, then it's something that I can win or measure myself against every day in real time throughout the day, which is how hard am I working, because that is the goal. And then
even I say this just for audio, but like everything else takes care of itself still puts the everything else as the goal still. It's just being vaguer. But if you just say like, the only point is working hard, because I know that whatever I'm going to get is stuff that I will become accustomed to. And the, I guess, opposite of the hedonic treadmill is like the resilience piece, is that my ability to work hard itself is growable. And so I just need to keep my RP, my rate of perceived exertion, at 8 or 9 or 10, because I know that when I look back on my life, the days that I loved the most were days when I had nothing left in the tank. And there's this thing that Jesse Itzler has this, and I love it. I hate him for having it because it's so fucking good. But he taught it to his kids, which is they have a little zero, means that there's nothing left in the tank. And when they finish a race or they do whatever, it's like, did you leave anything in the tank? And I thought about that, and the best days of my life were ones when I had nothing left in the tank. And so then the goal becomes to empty the tank, not where I drive, but just to drive the car as hard as I possibly can. And that means that in the beginning, it's just straightaways and just seeing how high I can rev the engine. But as I become more advanced, it's like, all right, well, now we've got turns, and then it's turns in elevation, and then it's turns in elevation without guardrails because we have risk. And so when I think about how hard I want to work, the interesting thing about that is that the only person who can judge you on your success is you, because you're the only one who knows how much left in the tank you really had. And so I just asked them a couple questions. I was like, who here before pledging started was like, I want to be a part of this house? The guys were like, me. Okay. I'm like, okay, got it. Who here thought it was going to be easy? I'm like, who here thought it would be hard? They raised their hands. I'm like, guys, this is what hard feels like. And all of a sudden there's just like this big exhale in the room. They're like, expectations get reset. This is normal. You wanted this thing, you expected it to be hard. Reality now matches conditions. Sorry, expectations now match conditions. This is what hard feels like. And then all of a sudden it's like they got permission to feel shitty. And by getting permission to feel shitty, they stop feeling shitty because they're like, this is just my new world. If you knew that you were going to succeed, it wouldn't be worth doing to begin with. The fact that you are uncertain when you start is what makes it worthwhile. And the fallacy of being in the pursuit is the worry or the concern that it won't amount to anything, because who you are becoming is the thing that you are amounting to in real time every day. Charlie Munger, in one of his seminal speeches, he talks about how to guarantee failure. It's like, what could you do to make sure that you were a failure? It's like, well, you would definitely get involved in drugs, drinking. He says, was it leverage, liquor, and women? That's, the Charlie's big one, right? But one of the ones that he has, I think he has 7 in his speech, is consistency. He's like, you have to make sure that you're inconsistent. He's like, because if you are consistent and you have none of the other attributes, he's like, you still might be successful. He's like, it's very tough for people who are consistent to not be successful. And he makes an especially pointed point about consistency, because in my opinion, it's one of the most difficult of the virtues for humans to do, because we're so attracted to novelty. And even, I'm just going to push the edges because that's where you have to like explore the fringe. Look at someone like Kanye, who's been borderline canceled for, multiple times, right? But like, why is Kanye, quote, uncancelable? Because he hasn't been, right? Not really. Like if he came out tomorrow with a hit album, I'll bet you it would fucking sell. Because I think that, at least for me, from what I see, I think he does what he believes. And people might be like, he's mentally unstable. There's all these other things, but like, no one thinks he's being fake. And I think that like, if that becomes the North Star of like, I just never want to become cringe, then it's just never be fake.